Hello and welcome to The Public Good. This is Dejia James from Partnership for the Public Good, or PPG, which unites over 365 community organizations working to build a better Buffalo. We're delighted to join you every Tuesday morning at 10:30 a.m. on Power 96.5 FM and Mix 1080 a.m. You can also watch full video of every show on our YouTube page. Follow PPG Buffalo on Facebook and Instagram for more information on how to access video and full podcasts of our show. And of course, you can always get great information on our website, ppgbuffalo.org. Before I introduce our guest this week, I want to highlight a new way I want listeners to interact with us here at the show. We want to hear your thoughts on how you can better your community. Email us at info@ppgbuffalo.org to let us know your ideas for change. We love to hear of any community organizations you appreciate or initiatives you think deserve more spotlight. We also would love commentary, your questions, or feedback on our current episode. So reach out. Be sure to let us know where you're listening from and who you are. Now back to the show. This week, we are joined by Andrea Ó Súilleabháin, Executive Director here at Partnership for the Public Good, and my good colleague. I have Andrea here because I want to discuss a huge event we're all really stressed out planning for Friday, our community agenda vote, which really is the whole heart of PPG. But before we do that, I just want to give you a chance to introduce yourself and we can get into talking about the community agenda.
Yeah, thank you so much. So I am from Western New York. I lived away for a number of years, about 12 years, and then came back and joined Partnership for the Public Good in 2017. It's hard to believe, but I'm about to finish my 5th year as executive director. So we've gotten through the deep COVID years, the challenging years of policing protests, so much of challenges, but so much beautiful growth and continued advocacy in Buffalo. I'm a public interest lawyer by background. I've always had a focus around policy change work and always been really drawn to support community-led, resident-led work, and really with a belief that is central to PPG, that people who are living our community's biggest challenges are the experts. They are resilient. They, some of the advocates in PPG's network have improved entire neighborhoods, have raised many, many children, some their own, some not their own, fed young people, old people in their neighborhoods. And so to really be able to support the people that literally hold communities together in times of challenges and celebrate together in times of abundance, that's just always been something I've been drawn to. And so to find PPG that really exists with that very mission of we will come in, support behind these wonderful voices of leadership and imagination in our communities has been really a real dream for me.
Yeah.
And the community agenda model that we're going to talk about, which has existed long before I joined for PPG's 16-year history now, is just such a brilliant and unique process around the United States, actually.
No, that's what drew me to PPG as well, which is so funny. I think like if you ask all of us who work here why we work here, I think that's the biggest thing is like the real commitment to community-led and community-based systems change. I mean, that's really what it is. I think it's really interesting that you have the legal background because I don't think everyone would think, oh, I'm going to law school, I want to help community-based systems change, right? And so, I don't know, I just am wondering also for you how that track kind of happened. Like, I don't know if when you went to law school, like that's what I want to do, or you saw a different side of the world and were like, no, I think I want to do this instead.
Yeah,
like, how did that go for you?
It was what I wanted to do. I knew I wanted to do what is called in law school in the legal world public interest lawyering.
Okay.
And I went to law school in New York City. So the push to go intern at a corporate firm, just try out a corporate firm was strong. And that's great for people who want to do it, but I knew that I didn't. So I managed to stay out of that and totally stick with the public service, public interest track. And, it's a small conversation, I think, in the legal community, but how to stay in the background, take the lead. On the other hand, the best lawyers are always sensitive to not just the needs of their clients, but the wisdom, the concerns of their clients. So building that relationship, if you want to be a a deep lawyer that's winning good changes for your clients. Building that relationship of trust is really important. And of
Mhm.
course, there's so many parallels in community change and
Yeah.
community advocacy work in our partnerships with government officials. It all comes back to those relationships and listening
Yeah.
and, helping people speak for themselves, which I
Right.
think some lawyers can help to do that as well.
No, that's amazing. I
Mm.
mean, like you're kind of just being able to broker that conversation, and I think we're going to talk about the community agenda eventually right now, but I think it's really cool because I've always thought of PPG as like that conduit, just like a bridge essentially, that really there is that gap between politics, the political sphere, policy, and somehow the community and constituents that they serve. It just there is a little bit of a communication gap there,
Mm.
and I think PPG becomes that apparatus to bridge that gap and help people find their voice in a system that can be kind of convoluted and confusing for the average person. Like, I don't think it's meant for the average citizen to necessarily engage in a significant way, other than obviously people say utilize your vote. But even that seems a
Mm.
little bit um, untenable when the candidates and all of their platforms and different things are maybe a little bit higher than the community that they're serving.
Yeah, and I think in Western New York, at all levels of government and in New York State, even when we see official public comment periods
Yeah.
or times in government when they're asking for residents to participate, it's very often superficial, a check the box exercise. We're going to collect these public comments so we can say we did it,
Yeah.
rather than really listen to what residents' concerns and ideas are. And that's really too bad, because research from all over the US, all over the world, shows that public participation in policymaking makes our government more successful, makes
Yeah.
policies more successful.
Yeah.
They're more likely to get implemented because residents care about the
There's
outcomes.
buy-in, right?
They're more likely to really meet what the true challenges and needs are.
Yeah.
And I think that is a cultural shift we still need to see.
Yeah.
I can think of 6 examples in recent years
Yeah.
where either Buffalo or Erie County or New York State even did sometimes large public participation processes, but then nothing happens with the outcomes.
Mhm.
I know some communities talk about being surveyed to death, even, right? Of
Yeah.
year after year.
Yeah.
Seems like, especially if you live in a low income neighborhood, you're always getting asked, why are you poor? What happens
Right.
because you're poor? And it's
Yeah.
like, we know
Yeah.
what policy
Yeah.
solutions there are for that. So let's take the next step and actually implement changes that will benefit people.
Do something
Yeah.
actionable. And speaking of actionable, the community agenda is very actionable
Mm.
process where we are starting from that beginning step. We're asking community first, what change do you see that needs to happen, and how do you want to approach that change? But can you explain the community agenda process for people who don't know what the heck a community agenda is?
Yes, absolutely. So, Partnership for the Public Good, that hosts this wonderful show led by Dejia now, is actually a network organization. We have well over 300 partners, close to 340 community partners that are everything from block clubs to large health agencies, theater companies, environmental groups. It really runs the range of issue areas, city neighborhoods, suburban, rural neighborhoods across Erie County, some in Niagara County. And every fall, we invite all of those partners bring to us what is the one policy change that they would like to see at the city, county, or state level, that would advance the common mission we have at PPG of building a more just, sustainable, and culturally vibrant region and community. We then have this beautiful democratic process where groups come together, they share their early ideas, they give feedback to each other. Sometimes these ideas, which we call planks on the community agenda, policy change priorities, policy planks, sometimes they get combined. We might have 3 ideas come in a given year for types of police reform for Buffalo, or we might have 2 ideas for the priority of a park on the outer harbor. And those groups, which sometimes have been working together, sometimes haven't been working closely together, will get to know each other through the agenda process, combine those planks in some cases. And then it all leads to a voting event, usually in December, and all PPG partners can come, hear a short pitch from each lead partner for these policy planks. There's discussion and debate, and then each PPG partner organization gets to cast votes to select the top 10 policy change priorities. And those planks are what we call throughout the year our community agenda. We unveil that agenda in the new year, and that's very truly how PPG divides our work. Our staff resources, as you know very well, is really driven by what do our partners select each year as these top priorities that they want us to work on together.
And so once that whole process happens and they're coming and bringing these agenda items to us, what is PPG's then commitment to helping them with this policy idea that they have?
Yes. So once the agenda is voted in, all of those partners are offered a training, come together for a training in what we call Public Policy Advocacy 101. That goes through how to work with the media, how to work with government officials, and how to build community coalitions to make public policy change. We then do some strategizing with partners. Which level of government is their policy plank addressing? What research might be needed? Is there a budget question, a data question? We will then go and do the research needs, of course, in continued communication with those partners. And then we will arrange for the first round of meetings with kind of all elected officials at that level of government that have the potential to support or move forward that policy plank. And we go with the partners to those meetings. We have them do their pitch. They're in the lead of advocating on the issue, and we're there really to help get the meetings, help support. We might co-host then town halls and community conversations. We might release a publication together. So really build a larger public dialogue around the issue that they want to see go forward, and then also try to move it through government change, which sometimes is with elected officials and sometimes is with government department staff who are working on these issues as well.
Yeah, and I think each plank definitely deserves and needs its own strategy, and I think that's also where PPG really comes in to help give strategic advice depending on what issue area you have, because as you said, some of them are directly elected official related, or they're more complicated and they implicate a department, and you kind of have to talk to the department head, the staff, and different people that need to also be bought into this type of policy change, and maybe even have advice or input on how that policy change should go because they're the ones in that field or whatever. So you're helping kind of bridge the gap of all those connected pieces that need to be there.
That's right. And then the 10 items on our community agenda can really vary from year to year on whether maybe it's already a coalition of 20 organizations. They've been working toward this for 3 years. It's very well defined, very well researched, and they need us to pin down these 3 specific elected officials that they've been really trying to get a meeting with, right? So they just need these very targeted points of assistance. And then the other side of that could be an issue that there hasn't been any advocacy in Western New York on this issue yet, or the particular policy ask is really starting from scratch, even still needs to build more partners in to support it. So again, like the type of assistance that we're giving can really look different from plank to plank, as we call them.
And we're talking about the planks. I want to kind of talk about a little sneak preview to Friday. We have our kind of proposed planks for this year already, which we're going to be voting for on Friday. And as Andrea mentioned, they're really ranging from all different types of topics. I mean, we have housing related ones, we have school suspension related ones, we have language access for refugees and new Americans. And we also have, let's see, there's so many, y'all. There's 19 this year, so it's a lot. Foster care, arts funding, community responders. I mean, just anything you can think of, youth services funding. So it really spans the gambit of different levels of community, whether it be youth or adults, or even those aging, or homeowners, or renters, whoever. I mean, any demographic you can think of usually is implicated in some way in one of the policy agendas that we get to oh, and I forgot to mention green ecology as well. We really just get anything, any kind of issue area you can think of. I don't want to read them all. We are voting Friday, and we are going to be publicly announcing who is the top 10 sometime in January. So stay tuned for that. But I also want to talk about PPG's commitment to community-based change, and how you've been doing that for last year 15 years, but now 16 years. But COVID, I don't know, it kind of skews it. So I'm saying it's our 15th anniversary, even though it's going to be our celebration of it rather.
I think because of COVID, we should say 20th, because that felt like 4 years of community change work in 1 year, but it was amazing.
It compounds it because you had to do it over when you're doing stuff online. It's like it advanced even faster. But yeah, so I'm just wondering, as you contemplate, upon PPG's work, I know you said you've been executive director for 5 years. But with PPG's mission, its founding, how do you feel we are now in our journey of community-based change? And how have we sought to maintain and kind of recommit PPG to that mission?
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting, first of all, to think about how much the community sector has grown in 15, 16 years of Buffalo. When PPG was created, an amazing circle of community advocates felt there were all these interesting initiatives happening at the neighborhood level, buying houses to make them green and repair lead and conditions hazards and keep them affordable, buying city lots to have community gardens and public community space. But a lot of the organizations doing that really cool, truly community-based revitalization work, they weren't big enough at the time to have their own research arm, their own policy arm. And so the thought was, if they could come together through a hub like PPG to speak up to elected officials about what would advance their work, allow them to expand this amazing work they were doing. So first, we really were serving a lot of those organizations, but as they have grown, so have we. And so I think some of the early organizations that worked with PPG are now beautifully off on their own with much larger teams that they had at the time, highly sophisticated advocates, part of New York State task forces, all these amazing pieces of work. And what happens that I think really keeps us rooted in grassroots community work is that every year, to get up to this number of 340 signed partners that we now have, dozens of new organizations are joining us. And some of them are quite new themselves.
Right.
They might just be 2 or 3 people. Sometimes they're young, sometimes they're all ages. Some of them have never met with an elected official before. And so for me, I love to see those partners come, because there's so much capacity that we can not just offer them, but that they can learn and add to their knowledge. And what we love to see through the community agenda process is groups come on, they get their policy priority on maybe 1 year, maybe they come back a second year. And then if it's not quite over the finish line yet, because policy change takes a long time, right? They might say to us, actually, we've gained all the skills we need. We have our own network of elected officials now that are interested in this. We're not even going to pitch again onto the community agenda, because we can keep this moving, and we can leave the spot for somebody else who needs it more. Now, that being said, of course, we do a lot of policy planks with large organizations as well, and we love doing that work too. But I think we can really stay rooted in these organizations that are new, that are addressing basic needs that are still so badly unmet for so many of our community members, especially during COVID and the quarantine. I mean, we did so much work simply to get all households to have running water when you had to stay at home, to get households to have access to food, to have their heat running, right? So that strikes me a lot too, is we have partners with these really creative, innovative solutions, but we also have a whole lot of partners that are just trying to make sure their neighbors are housed and have food and water and basic needs. And that work is so important as well.
Yeah. And I love that, because I think a lot of people think I see this issue, but I don't know anything about policy. I don't know anything about law. I'm not qualified to try and make some type of change in that way. I'm just going to try and find help for my immediate neighbor, whatever. But I think that PPG definitely is the place for those people who maybe they just formed a community group and it's their block club or whoever, that they formed a group, they have a concern and they're trying to fix an issue. And I find that some of our best policy planks actually come from those issues, because as we look more into it, we can see this is the deep rooted cause that's causing this outcome. And if we address this, we can mitigate this from happening ever all over Western New York. And so I think that's just one of the inventive, really cool aspects of PPG that I think is really just amazing for people that really feel like they aren't experts. And I think that sense of empowerment that they can have in participating in a process like this, and what you can learn and what we can learn from you, is amazing. And I think also that idea of a two-way kind of interaction of, we're not just trying to give expertise or research to people, but also gaining community-based knowledge, so that the work that we do as we continue with even other policy agenda items are considering the whole of Western New York, and not just certain communities and interests.
Yeah, and one thing that is brilliant that happens too is sometimes items get voted onto our community agenda. And I am not a cynical person, but then I feel like, uh-oh, that got voted on. And I don't think that's going to happen, right?
Yeah.
That I feel like politically are not going to go anywhere.
Yeah.
And then those are the planks that become wins that happen. And when you were speaking too about experts and, grassroots experts bringing in their own priorities. In 2020, I think voted to the number one spot on our agenda was to repeal these 13 traffic fees that the city of Buffalo had added.
The speed cameras.
Separate to the speed cameras, actually, right around that same time. It was all interrelated. But just maybe 18 months earlier, the city had adopted a new fee structure where when you got a traffic ticket, you wouldn't just have the fine, the penalty amount. You had this possible menu of 13 fees, a surcharge. Did you pay with a credit card? You're going to be charged this. Did you do this? You'll be charged, all these fees pile on top of it. And Jolanda Hill, who started the Fair Fines and Fees Coalition for Buffalo and who has Colored Girls Bike Too and is very leading on transportation justice, she brought that to the agenda. Repeal the 13 fees. And I thought, they just added these a year ago.
Right.
How are we going to get them to say, we only did this a year ago, but this was the wrong choice and we're going to take it away?
Rid of them,
And then with 2020, so much attention came to, of course, police disparities, huge police injustice, but also an economic crisis, people being fined and feed out of being able to afford food and basic utilities, which was a utility justice, a huge conversation that year. And the fees were repealed by the Common Council. And they should get credit for that too, because they had to repeal something that they had only adopted a year before, which is a hard thing to do as an elected official. So that's just one example where, unfortunately, I would not have put that at the top of the list because I thought politically it wasn't feasible. And then it came through, it happened with the leadership of individual residents like Jolanda saying, this is an issue that really needs to change. And one way I know we want to talk about too, that we keep that commitment to having a shared set of values with our partners is that it's free to join PPG. When you join, you are endorsing our mission, which we said is to build a more just, sustainable, and culturally vibrant Buffalo Niagara, and then our principles, which are a collective vision for Buffalo Niagara that were written at our founding 16 years ago. And it is an asset-based community assessment, really. So it says, what are the strengths? What are the assets of Buffalo Niagara that we should be building on? And then what are the challenges that we still have to address together? And that asset-based approach is important because that's the same thing we want to see at the neighborhood level. Residents already know what works. In many cases, on a micro level, they're already doing what is needed, and they need support to expand what they're doing and build that out. So always starting with that is important. And so this summer, we led a large participatory process among partners to say, hey, our founding principles have actually not been updated for 15 years. We knew for several years that there's language in them that was a little outdated. We still had listed, because things look very differently 15, 16 years ago, we still had listed in the challenges in the strengths, in the assets, for
Yeah.
example, that we had a surplus of quality, affordable housing.
Right.
I don't think hardly anyone thinks that's the
No.
case anymore. Some of the language around crime and safety issues was
Yeah.
very outdated on the challenges side.
Yeah.
We were missing some key areas as a challenge, like transportation. And then we ended up, with the input of our partners, really expanding our look at the strengths. And so
Yeah.
those got a lot of addition. And this beautiful new opening principle that our region has a really strong tradition of activism, abolitionism, organizing, and resistance. And folks will be able to check out that whole history language on our website. But considering we are a partnership all focused on civic action, it was really important to do that.
Yeah.
So we did a survey of our partners to share with them, here's what the founding principles has always been. What do you want to see? We got about 100 organizations giving feedback to that. We did a couple focus groups. We did one-on-one interviews, and we had a wonderful committee guiding this work of staff, board, and partner representatives. So really trying to renew our founding principles in partnership with so many of the folks that have been part of our collective work over all these years.
No, and it really just solidifies and recommits PPG to its core mission, but also making sure that it's staying in step with the community as it's changing. And so I think that's so important to take that reflective moment, especially after something like a 15th anniversary or something like that. I don't know if all organizations, I know they have strategic plans and different things like that, but I don't know if they take that time of introspection to really making sure that they're still in line with what the community needs. And so I think that just exemplifies PPG's role and what we want to stand for in this community. And I think that's amazing. We already reached the end of the show. It's like goes by so fast. But I want to thank you so much for coming to discuss this wonderful agenda process. We're going to be hopefully, like I said, announcing the top 10 winners by next month in January. But we will have, and for people watching, we have a little newspaper. I'm going to hold it up for the people watching on the YouTube that will probably be uploaded on the website as of next month. So you can check out what we've done so far this year, the renewed principles and other things that we've discussed and haven't had the chance to discuss in this short episode. So thank you so much, Andrea, for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. This is Dejia James with Partnership for the Public Good, or PPG, uniting over 365 organizations working to build a better Buffalo. We want to hear from you. What are your thoughts on the community agenda process, and what ideas do you have to better your community? Contact us through email at info@ppgbuffalo.org. Send us a recording, a written email with your comments and thoughts. Be sure to let us know where you're listening from and who you are. It's The Public Good, Tuesdays at 10:30 a.m. on Power 96.5 FM and Mix 1080 a.m.